Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of the Pace and Space podcast. This is episode 5, and with me, as always, is my good friend Leif. Brian, Leif, how are you doing this evening?
Well, I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good myself, ready to chop up a lot of NBA topics with you. And what are some things going on in your brain this week about what's happening in the NBA?
Well, another week, a lot of stuff going on in the NBA. Still looking at the Westbrook Harden triple double thing that's
Mm-hmm.
going on. You see a lot of articles about that. Got stuff happening with Boogie Cousins messing with the reporters, talking about his extension, which I don't even want to talk about that because that remains to be seen. And I mean, we have some stuff with the refs. I just read about that. The refs are pretty upset at Mark Cuban and the NBA for how they feel owners are able to dictate what the league does. I mean, there's so many different things going on, but I mean, we only have a little bit of time, so we can't dive into all those things going in my head.
Mm. Definitely some interesting topics, all the same. Bring up some good points, Boogie Cousins. If for nothing else, I'm happy we had that piece of news because I got to see that video of him interviewing the reporter and asking them if they were happy if he was going to stay or not. That was hilarious. Just
Yeah,
to,
and
just to see him with a boom mic pointing it at the reporters, asking them questions. That alone was worth it.
it really was.
Oh man, but while we're having some laughs, what has not been funny this week has been the situation with Derrick Rose and the New York Knicks. A couple of days ago, I'm sure all of you have heard already, right before tip-off of the Knicks-Pelicans game, it turned out that the Knicks just did not know where Derrick Rose was. They tried to get in contact with him, they tried to find out where he was, couldn't get a hold of him. Finally, Joe Noah gave some vague comments after the game of how he heard from him, but that was about it. And it was really just a weird situation. Turns out that he left for family reasons, went back to Chicago. Supposedly something going on with his mother that he needed to be there. But it's really just been a whole mess of a situation. Wouldn't you agree, Leif?
It is a mess. But I mean, isn't that been D-Rose's story for the this past year? Everything with him seemed like it was a mess.
Past few years, if you ask me.
Yeah, if you want to go back there, I'll take it there. What's your take on everything?
My take is I have a job, you have a job. Sometimes family emergencies come up. That's understandable. That's a given. But what neither of you would even think about doing is not even bothering to let our employers know that we won't be in the office. Nor would that fly at most jobs. So I get whatever may have been going on with your family, that takes priority. No one's saying stay and play the game. But it's not really too difficult to send a text message, to pick up a phone call. Just let people know you're alive and where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, you think that's proper courtesy? I know if either one of us were to do that at work, we got to report to HR, and here he is,
Mm.
just disappearing and not saying anything.
Yeah, and then his rationale for why he didn't answer was basically, well, I felt like I needed my space, so I didn't want to pick up the phone. What is that?
It's called to someone who's going through a little breakdown.
Mm,
And I mean, we have to backtrack and just think about what's happened with him since the summer. I mean, he had the court case that he was able to overcome.
right.
He's traded to New York, which is really the first time he's played outside of Chicago, outside of the little bit he spent in college. But other than that, he's been in Chicago, he's moved to New York, and now he's not the star player. He's probably the third player on that team,
But
if
it's
you
a
want to
super
say that.
team. But he's on a super team, though, so it's okay to be
And,
a third player on a super team.
breaking news: the Knicks are not a super team. Or as they will say, broken news. He's not. They're not a super team.
No, I
But
was
either way,
just joking off his words.
yeah. I just think he had unrealistic expectations of what he was expecting this year, and pretty much when you consider the fact that in the past few games in the fourth quarter he wasn't put on the floor. I mean, he's an ISO player. You're playing with the ISO king, Carmelo. Both of that doesn't work together. So he's benched. He's not happy. He runs to Chicago to get some of his mom's cooking. I mean, that's really what it is. He's like, look, I need to be held. Don't just tell me everything's gonna be okay. Yes, everything's gonna be okay. He flies back.
It's interesting. That's a very interesting take, and it might not be that far from reality. He said it was an emergency, it was a family issue. At the same time, you feel like if it was really a family issue, the Knicks would have been the first people he told. Cause I don't know how many family issues allow you to go for one day and then come right back. So that's a little fishy. Also, we're dealing with the Knicks, so if it can go as badly as possible, it will, and that's how this has seemed to go. Just the fact that Jeff Hornacek was basically left, as a sacrificial lamb to the media to try and explain where Derrick Rose was after the game when he was coaching the game. How's he supposed to know where this guy is if he was busy trying to coach the game that entire time? He should not have been the one left up there to try and answer questions. If anything, this is an issue where somebody like Phil Jackson, who is not shy when it comes to making his presence felt, should have stepped in and provided the answers that the media needed. That's his job. That's his role as the president of basketball operations. So they do that, and then Rose gets to start the very next game. No questions asked. He did get fined by the team, but I don't know what that really does when you fine the person, but then just let him start and play like 40 minutes the very next game and basically let him do whatever he wants on offense. It kind of sends that mixed message there. And, the cherry on top was, TJ McConnell hitting that game winner on them last night after giving up a 17-point lead.
Wasn't it lovely? But but come on, but think about that. You disappear. You know you don't tell anyone where you are, and then you start the next game. So and then to make matters worse, you lose.
Mm.
So it's not even the fact that the Knicks are saying, "Hey, we need you in our starting lineup. We can't go go on with you suspended or not having you play." But then you lose.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, Phil Jackson, I didn't hear him say anything. Has he said anything yet?
I haven't seen or heard anything, if at all, that he said he's kind of stayed out of this.
So Phil Jackson can say something about every other team in the league,
Except his own.
but except his own. He can tweet about everything. He can go on social media, go on podcasts, go on interviews, say everything he wants to say. But the one time he has an opportunity, responsibility rather, to say something, he doesn't.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
It's
And
not just Rose. It's the whole organization.
oh yeah, it's top down. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. It doesn't stop at all at Rose's feet, but he is a part of the issues there. And like you said, I think he's dealing with a lot of unrealistic expectations, not even necessarily for the team, but also for himself. There was one report saying that he was considering leaving basketball this week, and then there's another report that he's expecting a 4-year max contract this summer. I just don't know how anyone reconciles those two lines of thought. I mean, he clearly still sees himself as an elite NBA player. We know that was an issue in Chicago because, after he missed a considerable amount of time with some significant injuries, and Jimmy Butler rose and kind of took over as a go-to player in that time. Last year, once Rose was feeling a bit healthy again, he was like, "All right, guys, I'm the leader, right? It's my show." And then there was that kind of tension of, is it Jimmy's team, is it Rose's team? And the Bulls parted ways with Rose just to not have that tension anymore. And here he goes and comes to the Knicks, and he says, "Oh yeah, everybody's talking about us as one of the super teams." And it's like, who's saying that? Nobody's saying that. But in his mind, this is where he thinks things are. He thinks the Knicks are a super team because the Knicks have him. So he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm a top 5 player. Melo's here. Yeah, we're a super team. We're just like the Warriors. We're just like the Cavs. We got top 5 NBA players on this roster." And he still sees himself that way. And I get it. You took the league by storm, became an MVP. They created a rule in the CBA that people basically call the Derrick Rose rule, where if you make All NBA team, All Star, MVP, anything like that, you get a considerable raise, in your rookie contract and your very next contract. So he sees these things, and in his mind, I guess he still feels like he's on that level, but the play on the court says otherwise. Don't you agree?
Yeah, it does. I mean, doesn't it seem like a few years ago that when we were talking about best point guards in the league, we were talking him and Westbrook and CP3.
Mm-hmm.
Now we don't even mention him. And and of course we can say, well, he got injured, but it was outside of injury. He got injured. How he handled the injury wasn't the smartest way. But yeah, I mean, he's not getting that max contract. I know there's a team out there who's going to give him a contract, but a contract upwards of $150 million, he's not getting that.
I I think his best move would be maybe to do something similar to what Dwight Howard did with Atlanta, where he knew, like, okay, I'm not gonna get that 4 or 5 year max contract. What he did do is he took a 3 year contract at that same annual earning power, so it wasn't a max contract, but he's still getting kind of top dollar in a shortened contract. Maybe Rose could get something like that if he's willing to do a 2 year with a 3rd year option, where people will pay him a bit more, but they won't put the years up for him. He might have some suitors with that, but even with that, I really only see one team that might make a run for him:
Who's that?
the Sacramento Kings, baby.
Oh man, you know they would too. That sounds like a Sacramento move.
They're gonna do it because look at their point guards right now. They know they're gonna have to do something to try and get this team sorted out and put some kind of positive movement to make Cousins want to stay. People say the $200 million he's definitely gonna sign, but maybe not. You never know. I know sometimes people can say no to money if they're fed up enough in a situation. And if you're the Kings, you don't want to be in that position. Is Rose the answer? No, but Rose would be an upgrade to what they have playing at point guard right now, and that's one team I think would put the money up for him.
It'll be a bad move on their part, and I think it's one of those things where you will put bodies in the seats. You are going to win some games, but I don't think you need a person who is so ball dominant. You had that last year with Rondo. You see how that turned out. So to have that again, you really need someone who's able to facilitate, someone who's able to hit that open jumper, someone who's not going to try to look for their own shot every chance they get. And granted, that might help. That might help, Boogie when he's trying to get himself open, but I don't see it. And it's not even injury. I don't even think it's injury related or injury risk. I think he's put that injury aside for right now. I just think in his mind's not right. His play is not there.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point it's safe to say that Derrick Rose is an eccentric person when it comes to personalities in the NBA. he said a lot of things that kind of make you double take and reread the quote. And this is more in that line. And I think that's just I think that's the type of person he is. I mean, it's ironic that he's on the Knicks because it makes you think a lot about Stephon Marbury when he was in the NBA. You know, had a lot of eccentricity to him, especially when he was on the Knicks, and it all led to an eventual breakdown. And I hope that doesn't happen to Rose, but it is a little concerning. He's going almost down a eerily similar path.
Yeah, it's sad to think that Derrick Rose was my favorite player just a few years ago, and he's gone through this path. And the fact that you brought up Marbury, that's pretty interesting. Marbury, in my opinion, is going to be a Hall of Famer if the NBA really looks at it. That's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe Rose figures it out. Maybe we're looking too much into it. That's what I'm trying to tell myself. Maybe we're looking too much into it. Maybe he just had a day. Everyone has a bad day. We have sick days. We can call it a sick day. Maybe out of immaturity, this is his way of just trying to get some help. So maybe
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that.
Yeah, that's a good point about Rose. Hopefully that's the case, and it's not something more serious because his team, for his sake, for his team's sake, they really need for this to be a one-time thing and have no more distractions like this because they are trying to get back into the playoff race. They slipped. They lost they lost like 9 out of 10, but they're still in the race, and that actually takes me to something else I wanted to talk with you tonight. Leif, wanted to really go over the race for the 8th seed in the West and the East. In the East, it's kind of a race for the 7th and 8th seeds, but in the West, it's primarily that 8th seed that's up for grabs. And there's a lot of teams in the mix right now, and I wanted to see what are the teams you think are gonna get the job done and be able to play some playoff basketball come April. So let's start with the East. Who do you see solidifying themselves in that 7th to 8th seed in the East? Right now we got Charlotte at 20-19, and then the Wizards at 19-19, right at 500, and then right behind them are the Bulls, the Pistons, the Knicks, and the Magic.
So for the seventh place, I still like Charlotte. I think Charlotte has been playing some good basketball. Yeah, they've lost the last 3 games, but I feel with Charlotte is a team that has pretty much been kept together, and so the seventh seed I think is going to go to them.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I feel like there's a battle between the 8th seed and you look at Washington. I'm looking at Chicago, Detroit. Any one of those teams can take that 8th seed. Off the top of my head, I want to say I think it's going to go to Detroit. I feel pretty good about Detroit. I think right now they've had a lot of issues with Reggie Jackson coming back. He hasn't been himself. And I'm hoping that he's able to come back around to playing how he played last season before he got injured. And if he's able to come back and contribute, they have a good chance at taking that 8th seed. Chicago still has a lot of question marks. They had to bench Rondo. They brought him back, and he's seemed like he's playing a little bit better, but still too many questions. Washington, they're I keep putting too much stock into Washington. Every year I'm always thinking Washington has a chance, but I'm always let down. So I will say in chances, I will say Detroit. And for my surprise pick for the 8th seed, I think the Sixers can come out of nowhere and battle for that 8th seed.
That comeback win really spoke to you, huh?
It spoke to me. They're playing together. The rest of the East has a lot of questions. A lot of questions you're seeing up and down. You talk about Brooklyn. Miami has questions. Now they're talking about being sellers and rebuilding. Orlando talking about trading players and they don't like Peyton and all these other questions with New York and Chicago. Indiana's playing better, which is good. So there's a lot of questions there. And I think this is the time for Philly to strike. They got Okafor, who's a good trade chip. I don't know who wants him. They made a big move by putting Noel back in there. I don't know if this is secret fandom coming out a little bit. Maybe, I'm not sure because I'm really not a 76ers fan, even though I think I'm kind of becoming one and starting to trust the process. But I don't know. I think that they can actually push it. And B's talking about it. I'm starting to trust the process.
Wow. The 76ers. No, I get what you're saying. All these teams have significant to severe flaws, and I think some of them are gonna start falling and down and losing the pace as the season continues. Um, Sixers, I just can't see it. I just can't see it. They don't have a point guard. I don't care what you say about T.J. McConnell's game-winning shot. They still don't have a point guard. They're still trying to figure out which big other than Embiid to play so that they can showcase and try and get a trade for. Because before, Noel wasn't getting any minutes because they were playing Okafor, maybe primarily to try and trade him, and nothing's materialized. And now they're like, all right, let's get Noel back on the court. And now Okafor is getting DMPs. So I don't know what's going on there. Um, at the same time, you brought up a lot of good points about the Wizards, about the Bulls. I don't believe the Pistons are going to get that 8 seed, to be honest. Believe it or not, I'm still saying the Knicks. I still
Well,
think the Knicks can take this 8 seed. I know they have a lot of turmoil, but, you know, in New York, New Yorkers feed off turmoil. They need to be angry about something before they do anything well. And maybe this is what's going to galvanize those guys. Because, yeah, Rose, he, you have that off the court issues, but he's played well enough for them to win games. Um, Porzingis is still growing. You know, Melo's still playing some good basketball. They got some rookies that you know are growing as the season progresses. I think they need to make a tweak or two. Like me personally, I think they just need to commit to Porzingis being the 5 and Melo being the 4. I think if they did that, that would open up a lot more possibilities for that team and really get them clicking. They still have the best potential, I think, out of that, malaise of teams that are fighting for the A seed. I agree with you that Charlotte is gonna be safe. They're gonna get in the playoffs, maybe as the 7th seed, maybe as the 6th or 5th seed, because all these teams are kind of like very close together right now in the East. But yeah, I think Knicks are gonna get in there. I really do.
I still don't see it. I really, really don't. They're battling themselves. And how are you going to battle other teams if you're still battling yourself? And that's the issue with New York, whether you're talking about the ISO King Melo, whether you're talking about Porzingis, you have the fans asking whose team is it? Melo staying in his team, and it is it's still his team. But I mean, the coach is getting fed up with his ISO game. You got D Rose and his sabbaticals for a day. Uh, it's just too much. It's just too much, and the schedule hasn't been too kind to them. Next week or so, they play, I think 2 or 3 back-to-back games.
Hmm.
That's a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
right now, I can't see it, but the players are there. If the players are able to come together, maybe it'll be during the All-Star break that they can get together, and figure it out. Some off time, get clear their heads, come back, get a good few practices under their belt, and hopefully they can come back and maybe they will battle for the eighth seed. But right now, I don't see it.
Yeah, I respect that. It's gonna be very hard, especially now. We're only in January. It's very hard to see a clear winner that's gonna rise out of that crop. But it should make for a very entertaining race, even up to March, all the way into the last weeks of the season. So it'll definitely be worth keeping their eye out, our eyes and ears out to that. But now we go to the West, and like we said, 1 through 7 is pretty set. But we have the Blazers right now sitting at 18 and 23, and then half a game behind them are the Kings. Only 2 games behind them are the Pelicans and the Nuggets. And you know what? The Lakers are only 3.5 games themselves behind the Blazers. With Timberwolves right behind them as well. So who do you think is gonna come out of the West and get that 8th seed?
This is a tough one. This is a very, very tough one. I just thinking off the top of my head, I want to say the Pelicans.
Mm,
I think the Pelicans can really get into that eighth seed. Portland, I still feel that they still are a player away, and I'm not sure whether or not they want to add that player. But I do think the Pelicans have a chance to battle for that eighth seed.
yeah, Pelicans are definitely in the mix, especially the way Anthony Davis has been playing. Nuggets are interesting. I wouldn't rule them out. They just handed it to the Pacers today in London, put 140 points on them. So that's a team with some potential. you know. And I'm a Laker guy. I would love to see the Lakers get that 8 seed. They're not too far away, but a lot of things are gonna have to go right for them to get the 8 seed. So while I would love to see it, I wouldn't call them the strong favorites for that. I think the favorite still has to be Portland. You got Damian Lillard, you got CJ McCollum, and that's a 1-2 combination. None of these other teams um, can say that they have. Denver's still trying to find out what their team is. The Kings are still looking for who they're gonna pair with Cousins for that 1-2 punch. Lakers and T Wolves, they're very young teams. Like, there's no real veteran leadership that's gonna like basically carry them to the playoffs. So I still say that it's the Blazers. They started off slow. They slumped a bit. The defense is not where it needed to be to start the season, but they have the right combination of offensive weapons, and if they could just work out that front court rotation, or maybe turn a couple of those guys into someone more consistent, maybe they can turn some of that front court, you know, mediocrity into Nerlens Noel or someone along those lines. Then we're talking about something very interesting. But even if they keep the team as is, I think they're just one or two adjustments away from pulling away from that 8 seed pack, as it were.
Now, do you think Dallas can make a run?
Dallas, no, I'm gonna say this is not gonna be one of those years for Dallas, and it stinks because I feel bad for Dirk. It would be great if they could make one more push, not just fade into the distance or fade into the sunset, as it were. But I just don't see it. They're behind the Suns, and the Suns don't want to be good. The Suns are trying to figure out what they're doing, and they're still a game ahead of the Mavs. So it's just not working for them this year.
But then here's the thing too: the Mavs are only 5.5 out of that eighth spot.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, you're talking about you go on a good 10 game stretch when 7 out of 10, you can find yourself only a few games out. So, not saying it's going to happen. I mean, the team is awful right now, but we're trusting that maybe Dirk can do something. Harrison Barnes, Carlisle can coach something up, maybe make a trade before the deadline.
Yeah.
If they want to still be buyers at this point, they might be content at just getting a lottery pick. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not absurd when you say, like you said, they're only 5.5 games back. But they are still searching for a lot of answers. Um, you know, Darren Williams, he's been good since he came back. Can he stay healthy? That's a big question. Can they find some way not to play Dirk at center? They have Andrew Bogut, but Andrew Bogut, he's in and out of the lineup. He's a health concern as well, injury risk. And if he goes down again, then Dirk is playing heavy minutes at the five. So Carlisle has his work cut out for him. He's got some players there that can play. I don't really understand how they gotten to slide this far down, but here we are. Can they make a big run and kind of leapfrog these other teams? Because it's not just the fact that they're only 5.5 games back. They have 7 teams they have to leapfrog. That means they need all 7 of those teams to perform worse than them for the remainder of the season. That's a lot to ask for. So
It is.
that's kind of where I'm coming from on that front. I still say it's the Blazers' spot to lose. They're the best team, I think, talent-wise, out of all of those teams that we were talking about. If anyone is gonna surprise, I think it's gonna be the Nuggets or the Pelicans, like you were saying. But my pick is the Blazers. But speaking of the Pelicans and speaking of Anthony Davis, we do have some interesting things to talk about. An article went up today. I wrote it about Anthony Davis on the Sideline Reporter, and the title is Anthony Davis is having the best season you're not talking about. Am I right for saying that, Leif?
You are. You are. He's having a great year, and it's sad, or in some cases, some might say it's justified, why his season's not being talked about.
Why do you say that?
Well, the one thing when you have a great season, what people want to see is winning. And right now, they aren't winning. And I know we just spoke about how they're, a few games out of that eighth spot, but they've underperformed the past 2 seasons. And so when you look at a player of his caliber, one who's putting up monster numbers, we don't even have to go back that far. We can go back to opening night. He scored 50 points and had a ridiculous stat line,
Yeah.
but they lost. And granted, it's not his fault that they lost, but you would think that a player of his caliber will be able to propel his team to victory. And so it's kind of sad that it isn't. And you look around the league and you look at Westbrook and seeing what he's doing in OKC. I mean, he's carrying that team. You might as well just take the Westbrook off the back of his jersey and put OKC. I mean, he is the team. It's true. He's the team. If he doesn't play, the team, when he goes off the court, I mean, the differential is laughable. Like, they can't score. They don't know what to do. So, but then you also look at Harden, what Harden's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it just shows that winning is what's going to help you state your case as a valuable player, as someone who's worthy to talk about. There's so many other storylines in the NBA right now, and unfortunately, his story gets pushed aside. But the way to fix all that is winning. If he's winning, then that'll kind of build up his storyline.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because 2 years ago they made that 8 seed. They gave the Warriors a pretty hard fight. They even took a game in that series, and that's when the buzz grew even louder about Anthony Davis. He entered last season as a prohibitive MVP candidate, and then the wheels just fell off on that team. And also, what has hurt him is the injuries too. He hasn't really consistently played full 82 game seasons. Last year he played 61 games. The year before he played 68 games. Even right now he's currently missing a game tonight, or I think he missed a game yesterday because of his hip injury. Now, granted, it's only the third game he's missed this year, so he's doing a much better job of staying on the court. And I think all of that kind of just puts a kind of a dour perspective on Anthony Davis and the Pelicans. But the reality is he's having an amazing season. He's having an elite season. He's having one of the best seasons you can have as a 23-year-old big man in the NBA. And that's what people forget. He's only 23 years old. So we were talking about, you were talking about Harden, talking about Westbrook, and how those guys are carrying their teams. And that's very true. But they're also, 4 years older than Davis. They've played about 4 at least seasons more than he has right now, 3 to 4 more seasons than he has. So they have a little bit more experience than he does right now, and you would expect them to be able to carry the teams as they are. And Davis, the biggest issue for Davis is the team, it's the franchise. I can't really say that he's not doing his part, because the guy is averaging 29 points per game, 12 rebounds. He's one of the league leaders in blocks, and he does this all while having his highest usage rate. He has a usage rate of 33.5%. That's a point guard usage rate. And he's playing center for this team. And when you think about that and everything he's able to do, it just, I wonder how much he could do if he has some good teammates around him,
Yeah, I can hear that. But let me ask you this. So we know how he's looked at by media. His story is not being talked about amongst the media. But what about the fans? I mean,
Well,
do the average NBA fan notice what he's doing, or do they even care?
it's a good point. When I looked up the All-Star voting so far, and right now he's the 4th highest vote getter in front court Western Conference players. That's not bad. But you would figure someone of his talent would be a shoe-in starter by this point, especially when you factor in that this year the game's being played in New Orleans.
Exactly.
If
Exactly.
if anything, you would assume that at least the fans in New Orleans would rally to get their guy to start when the All-Star game is in their hometown. And yeah, there's a lot of Zaza Pachulia nonsense going on with the Western Conference voting. But even still, even with that, he's 4th, but he's considerably further than the top 3 vote getters. They all have a couple 100,000 more votes than him. And this is a player who we were saying is going to be the MVP eventually in this league because he's that good. And we were putting him up there with the names like Curry, like Harden, like Westbrook, who are also MVP candidates. And he can't even get a starting vote in the All-Star game. And that is the most amazing part about this. The fans, I don't really think they truly see what's going on with it, how well he's playing. It's becoming kind of like a Kevin Garnett situation when he was back on the T-Wolves. Wouldn't you agree?
That's a perfect example. I mean, Kevin Garnett was an amazing player, and I feel like a lot of players, a lot of fans did not see what he was doing when he was in Minnesota. And even when he was, I mean, he was automatic, and no one really realized what he was doing, his impact. And then when he went to Boston, then they started saying, "Oh wow, this is a great player." And it's like, no, look back at his tape when he was in Minnesota. That's the
Mm-hmm.
player we all knew about. Those who are watching him, those who are not just average fans, those who are like you and I watching all the time, he was a great player. And I think, to your point, I think he's falling into that same category. A player who has the ability, has the skill, but the fans aren't appreciating it.
Yeah, it's a shame. Not even his hometown fans are really sticking up for him right now. Maybe that's just overall disappointment with the team as kind of being put on his shoulders as well. That has to be part of it. You know, even though they have a chance to get the A seed, they're 9 games under 500. It's not like they're playing great basketball. It's just that nobody else is playing definitively better than them to run away with the 8th seed. So you have that. Also, when you compare that to the year they did make the playoffs 2 seasons ago, they did that as an over 500 team. So the team's only gotten worse, not better. The front office has made a lot of weird decisions. The fact that Dell Demps has still been in this front office this whole time is amazing. He must be a really great guy because when you think of the fact that he was the GM before the NBA even took over and before they found a new owner, and he's been through this whole time. He was the GM when David Stern vetoed the Chris Paul trade,
Wow.
and he's still at the helm right now. They had a team that was over 500, made the 8th seed, gave a hard fight to the Warriors, and then that same summer, the GM and the owners decided to part ways with that head coach, and
Yep.
it and they hired Alvin Gentry because maybe they thought Alvin Gentry was gonna unlock the offense, but that was short-sighted because Monty Williams played to that team's strengths. He said, "Okay, I have Anthony Davis, I have these other guys who can play really good defense. We're gonna play like that, and we're gonna let Anthony Davis score the points we need to get over the hump. We're gonna let him do it. We're gonna let Tyreek Evans do it. We're gonna let Drew Holiday. That's gonna be our scorers. Everyone else, you focus on defense." And it worked like that. But now they try to get more offensive with players that are not playing up to the billing they were supposed to. Like the big signing this summer was Solomon Hill. Like he's gonna help unlock this offense. At the same time, you let Ryan Anderson walk out the door. So
Exactly.
so you have this team now that's not as good as it used to be defensively in terms of personnel, and they're not what they should be on offense either. So and a lot of that impacts the the effect Anthony Davis can have on defense too, because what basically is happening, he's doing a lot of cleanup work on defense. And so people, they look at his defensive rating, they look at his defensive numbers, and they say, "Oh, he should be better than that." But when you think about it, he's trying to save this team. He's trying to put out every fire he can, and then at the same time, he's got to deal with post ups, got to deal with boxing out, get the rebound, and then he's the top player on offense too. Every play goes through him on offense. So they're asking a lot of him, and I hope they figure that situation out because they're wasting some prime years of a very talented player right now. He signed that extension in 2015, and so they have him for a couple more years. Maybe they'll trade him in the next 3 years, or maybe they're just gonna keep spinning the wheels and then assume that he's gonna stay because they can offer him that $200 million 5-year extension, whatever it'll be, that designated player extension rule. So it's it's gonna be it's gonna be interesting to see because this team has more or less been the same team they were before they got Anthony Davis. They just happen to have him now, and so they play a lot better than they should because he's on the court. But without him, we're looking at the last 6 years of of basketball that makes Sam Hinkie look like he's trying to win the championship.
That is true.
So we'll see, but he's having an amazing season. It's getting kind of lost with the poor play of his team and also with all the other amazing statistical seasons we have going on this year. But Anthony Davis, he's still as good as advertised, and is worth bearing out to watch and see. Hey, maybe you'll be right. Maybe the Pelicans will be the team that gets that 8th seed, which would be great because then we will be able to get to see Anthony Davis in the playoffs again.
Right, and I think that's what we all need to see. We all need to see him back in prime time, back in the spotlight, seeing what he's able to do and carrying his team. And hey, the trade deadline is a little over a month away, so hey, we don't know what deals can be made. We know there's some players out there who has the potential to be traded right about now, so hopefully they can make a deal. You mentioned using Davis at the five. That's something we haven't seen too much of, but hopefully they can do it more. They have a whole bunch of stuff going on in the backcourt. Maybe they can clean that up. But and if they can take a little bit more off of Davis' shoulders and allow him to just play his game, I think that will help people notice what he's doing.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. We need to see Anthony Davis in the playoffs again. We need him to remind everybody just how good he is. He is a spectacular talent. So it remains to be seen. We had a lot to talk about today. We talked about some interesting topics. We'll come back at the end of the season and see how we did. If my picks were right, your picks were right. If we were both wrong, we'll find all that out later on in the season. But for now, it was great talking to you, Leif, as always. Once again, you can find us at the slreporter.com. That's the Silent Reporter, our website. Go check out that new article about Anthony Davis. And as always, you can find us on Twitter at the SL Reporter. You can find me on Twitter at CalDan384. And Leif, why don't you give us your Twitter handle again?
All right, my Twitter handle is at LDB Creations.
Yes. And you can find us on SoundCloud, and now you can also find us on iTunes. So if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, review. We love to hear from anyone who's interested in what we've been doing so far. And for now, that's everything. So just want to say goodnight to the people, and thank you once again, Leif, for talking with me this evening.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everyone.
All right.